the Megacast, an hour-long TV and radio streaming show keeping you informed on the day-to-day news. Live from West Bloomfield, we're bringing you the news, updates, and information impacting communities around Michigan. Join our host, Tyler Kieft, as he talks with community members, business leaders, and professional experts about the stories that impact you. You're watching the Megacast on Civic Center TV.
When the temperatures are chilly, being together warms the soul. Keep the winter fun going. Help protect yourself and those around you by keeping your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
1 in 4 Michigan homes has high levels of radon, a naturally occurring radioactive gas known to cause lung cancer. It doesn't matter where you live or what type of home you have. You won't even know it's there unless you test. So don't wait. Testing is cheap and easy, and if there's a problem, it's simple to fix. Visit michigan.gov/radon to learn more.
We took action. Will you?
You're listening to your radio homes for the Megacast, 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake and 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. Today's edition of the Megacast begins now. Welcome to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Today we'll be talking to a number of people about topics of interest and importance to Michiganders just like you. Let's begin with what's making headlines today on our local news page on civiccentertv.com. Our top story comes from Tanya Wilt at the Detroit Free Press. If you haven't looked outside or you haven't been outside yet today, well, surprise, surprise, it's snowing. Already this morning, quite a significant amount of snow has already fallen on the ground and on the roads as well, making conditions rather slick. That being said, the bulk of the snowfall is expected to be during the morning commute today, and the precipitation will lighten as the day goes on, terminating sometime this evening. At this time, the National Weather Service says our local area can expect anywhere from 3 to about 5 or 6 inches of snow on Friday, and drivers should be especially prepared for reduced visibility, especially throughout the morning. Snowfall rates are expected to be anywhere from a half an inch per hour to 1 inch per hour this morning, which is the culprit of that low visibility out there on the roads. And it already is quite tough to see out on the roads as you're driving in, as snow is falling off of people's cars because they haven't properly brushed them off before they've come in, or the snowfall's been at such a high rate, or just because of all the liquid that is flowing off of the roads, off of people's tires and back onto your windshield. So it's definitely a lot tougher this morning than it would be normally to make your commute into your workplace. So definitely take your time. If you haven't left already for work this morning, or if you're already at work and need to go out for some reason or another throughout your day, you're going to need to take extra time as the storm continues to file through. It's going to consistently snow throughout much of the day. The heaviest snow, of course, is currently ongoing or is behind us at this moment in time as we're doing our live show this morning. But the snow is going to continue to be consistent throughout the day. 3 to 6 inches has kind of been that range. This morning the forecast was 3 to 5. Yesterday it was looking like 3 to 6 inches. So somewhere in that range is what we're going to get today out on the road. So you should be prepared to make regular stops because of traffic incidents or because of lower visibility and people driving slower than normal. And you should probably consider driving a little bit below the speed limit yourself as roads continue to be slick. Yes, they're being cleared. Yes, they're being salted, especially in those high priority areas on the freeways and on the major thoroughfares such as Orchard Lake Road here in West Bloomfield, our flagship area, a flagship station here on our Megacast network, as well as other key roads all throughout Oakland County and around the state. But that doesn't necessarily mean that those roads are going to remain clear immediately after they're plowed or immediately after they're salted for an extended period of time because the snow continues to fall so consistently. Another good place to go for all this information and more is on civiccentertv.com/ice. Our ice page will have information that links you to the National Weather Service, which will give you more reports on this on this snowstorm throughout the day. If you scroll down on that page, you will see, it won't update this, it still has some information from the previous storm. But at the bottom of that page, it has information on down power lines, safety information in case the snow once again weighs down power lines. Although this is pretty light snow from what I had experienced this morning as I wiped off my car, my vehicle, and as I walked through it to get into work here at Green Media Center, where this morning it just happened to be that the parking lot was not very well plowed, and so there was a lot of snow on the ground, but it was very light snow. It's not nearly as heavy and packable as it was a week ago during that storm, but nonetheless, I digress. CivicCenterTV.com/ice at the bottom of the page has a link to the National Weather Service in their office in White Lake. That's the Pontiac, Detroit regional office located in White Lake. You can click on there, and it'll take you to their website where you can get more weather updates for our local area. Same thing with DTE Energy. You can sign up for DTE outage alerts. So whether it's your home or your office or somewhere else you need to be today, you'll have an idea of whether or not that place may or may not go out of power at some point. Same thing with outage maps for DTE Energy and for Consumers Energy. With storms like this, power outages are always going to be possible, especially with some of the issues we've had of late with power outages and some of those utilities still not entirely fully repaired at this time throughout our area. Many of those taking on mitigations that have restored power, but maybe have not put them in a consistent position to maintain that power over time. So again, 3 to 6 inches of snow are expected to fall today. The National Weather Service projecting somewhere in the range of 3 to 5 inches as of this morning, with the heaviest snow currently ongoing and has been ongoing throughout much of the morning commute. But it'll dissipate as time goes on today, and sometime this afternoon, or late this afternoon and early this evening, we'll see the end of this snowstorm with several inches on the ground here in our local area. Once again, right after it all melted away almost yesterday with the temperatures being as high as they were. So that's going to be what our forecast is for today. So once again, drive safely on the roads, be ready to make stops. It's going to be a lot slower of a go out there this morning and throughout the day as the snow continues. And of course, give those plow vehicles and give those salt trucks plenty of time to navigate as they need to throughout the roads, because they're doing it for your benefit. Ultimately, it may not benefit you necessarily right at that moment if you're behind a salt truck or you're in front of a plow, but on the other side, as you're coming back that way, or other people that are going through the same experience you are, it's going to be a lot clearer and a lot safer for them as well. So definitely take your precautions today out on the road. The snowstorm, not as bad as the one last week, certainly not as bad as the ice storm in terms of road conditions either, but this is still a weather event you're going to want to be very careful with here in our local area today. Also making headlines from Ben Orner at MLive on our local news page on CivicCenterTV.com as we talk about some of those power outage issues and those resources for you to check in on your power. DTE Energy and Consumers Energy officials are beginning to be addressed by government officials in terms of why power utility reliability has been so low as of late, or we've had so many major outages. As senior officials at both DTE and Consumers will testify next week, Wednesday, in front of the state's House Energy Committee. And already some representatives are making pointed statements at the utilities, with Representative Donovan McKinney, a Democrat from Detroit, stating, quote, "I have folks in my district who have gone 12 consecutive days without power. I have other folks in my district who lost power for maybe 4 or 5 or 6 days, and their power was restored just to lose it again," end quote. And another Democratic representative from Detroit, that being Representative Helena Scott, said, quote, "We're going to bring them in and have them explain exactly why so many outages, why so long, and moving forward, what will be their plan to help reduce these outages," end closed quote. The 17-member committee will grill DTE's president and COO Trevor Lauer, as well as 2 vice presidents from Consumers Energy, and the public will also have their say as well. So this will be a public meeting. This will be an open meeting, and public comment will be taken. As of now, this is the only planned hearing on this matter, although it would not exactly be a surprise if more is to come, as this has been a critical issue in these areas, and there's been repeat problem areas for a lot of these power outages, not just in these last couple of storms, but in a number of storms in the past and other weather events in the near past as well. We think about a couple summers ago with those major thunderstorms we had back to back to back over the course of the summer, and how that caused a lot of flooding and a lot of power outages and so many issues, particularly with people being able to stay with their power on during the sweltering heat and humidity of the summer, and with all the other issues that were going on in the community as a result of those storms. Now we're seeing similar things happening in these past couple of storms, particularly the ice storm of a couple of weeks ago, and then the major snowstorm of last week that came through and really hit this community hard, with hundreds of thousands of people in both incidences being out of power, many for an extended period of time. And so now lawmakers, of course, are going to once again be called on to have these utilities answer why this is continuing to be such a problem. Why, after they fixed the power from the previous storm, did the same thing happen again? What can be done to prevent some of these issues from being so recurring in the future? Yeah, sure, you can fix a downed power line from an ice storm, and then next week over you have another major storm. There's really not a whole lot necessarily that can be done about that, because that snow's also going to weigh down that power line and could detach or damage that new power line or that restored power line, and you'll lose power again. So how do you prevent that? Do you put those power lines underground? What would need to happen in order to make that happen and make that possible for these communities? How would that affect those communities? Are there other ways that they can refine the power grid so that these outages aren't so severe when they do happen, when a power line does fall because of it being weighed down or being damaged by wind or damaged by falling debris or flying debris? What can be done? These are among the questions that this committee is going to be asking next week, Wednesday, when both DTE's president and COO, as well as two vice presidents from Consumers Energy, approach the 17-member committee about this issue. And this is not the only committee that's going to be asking questions of DTE and asking questions of Consumers Energy. The Regulatory Commission, Michigan Regulatory Commission, will also be doing that coming up soon, or has been asking some of these questions already. As we know very well, DTE is considering or trying to get a 13.9% monthly rate hike be approved in the state of Michigan for their specific customers. And that's come with a lot of backlash too, because of these kinds of issues. And especially after you have not one, but two major storms right back to back, and then a third snowstorm after that. Really, this is going to be that litmus test of frustration, because if there's more power outages in some of those problem areas that we saw in the past two storms, that's going to be a huge point of contention, especially considering in comparison to the ice storm and in comparison to last week's snowstorm on Friday of last week, that this is very light in comparison to that. Still not anything to balk at, but it's very much not as severe as those past two storms. So if there are outages as a result of this, that's going to really put a lot of pressure on DTE and on Consumers Energy, on top of what pressure they already have on them because of these last two incidences, and now getting some of that pressure from the government, as the 17-member committee of the Michigan House Energy Committee will be asking many questions in a hearing next week with DTE and with Consumers Energy. Finally, making headlines on our website on civiccentertv.com, on our local news page today from the Detroit Free Press. Today is a solemn day here in Michigan, it being the third anniversary of the first two of the state's COVID-19 cases, one of each in both Wayne and Oakland counties. And just 8 days before, a man from Southgate became the first Michigander to die from the novel coronavirus at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Since then, thousands upon thousands of Michiganders have been infected and or have died as a result of the disease. Our hospital systems had been flooded and relaxed from caseloads several times over, and our world was forever changed. Just days after the first case and first death were reported in the state of Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer announced her administration's first of several stay-at-home orders and shut down, quote-unquote, non-essential businesses and other practices and entities, leading to a wrath of controversy as people, of course, disobeyed the orders. Individual businesses disobeyed the orders. Industries called for change and called these decisions unconstitutional, and so on and so forth. And so, and Calvin, if you can come back to me, I'm noticing that there's an error on our page there that I will fix here later on today, as that is an article from yesterday under today's headline. We did not replace that properly. At least I did not replace that properly. So I'll take care of that later on. So we'll continue on. I called for the courts to reverse them and even plot, and then there was even a plot to kidnap and kill Governor Gretchen Whitmer because of these orders that were being called draconian and being called taking a step way too far beyond her constitutional rights and her constitutional abilities as the governor of the state of Michigan. And regardless of what you think about the stay-at-home orders, or regardless of what you think about what's gone on over the last now almost 3 years that we've been from the stay-at-home orders, and now really 3 years from today, the first cases reported in the state of Michigan. It's been a long 3 years, and we're back to some semblance of normal, but COVID-19 is still around in our communities. It's still affecting people all throughout our local area, and so it's definitely something that has changed our world. And we think about March every year, it's going to kind of sneak back at us that, wow, it was X number of years ago that we first heard about COVID-19, or X number of years ago that we first had cases in our local area, and it really became real here in Oakland County and in southeastern Michigan. Then more cases throughout the state. It became real across the state. This is actually something that's turning into a big thing here. It wasn't like past issues we've had or past mass spread of disease on a worldwide scale that looked really scary but ended up kind of fizzling out, like Ebola a few years ago, almost 10 years ago now at this point. Ebola, before that it was bird flu or swine flu. We've had several of these sort of incidents since H1N1, which was the bird flu. And those all kind of dissipated. They went away. They didn't become major issues. And so a lot of us thought this was something similar to that. A lot of people in our communities thought this was going to be something similar to that. The key buzz term then was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. A lot of people thought that with this disease spreading rampantly worldwide, beginning to spread rampantly in Michigan and across the United States, that simply 2 weeks of limited activity would have been enough to take this thing down. And I don't think many people, if any, imagine that it would be several years later and we'd still be talking about the impact of COVID-19 on our communities. And so we always circle back to about this time of the year. And I know I do, and we do here at Civic Center TV, at our flagship, because it was around this time 3 years ago that we were also getting ready for an event we do every year called the State of the Communities. And of course, we had always held that in person. We had that particular year, 2020, had been the second time that we had been doing that particular ceremony. We were doing that at what was then Abbott Middle School, and then became West Bloomfield Middle School temporarily, and is currently serving as Roosevelt Elementary School in the West Bloomfield School District. We had done that there the first year. The second year, we went to the old Orchard Lake Middle School. This is now the new West Bloomfield Middle School, a great facility where we're going to hold the event this year. And initially, we were going to have a regular audience. We had set up chairs. We had been ready to welcome an audience in to the gymnasium, which also had a stage on it for events like this at the old Orchard Lake Middle School. And then the first cases came up on March 10th of 2020. And because the first cases came up, and that was just a couple of days really before we were going to have that event, we decided, okay, it's going to be just the leaders of these communities and a couple other officials from each of these cities and from the township and from the school district as selected by the leadership. And then it came down to more cases spreading all throughout the state, not just here in Oakland County, but with Oakland County being a real problem area for COVID-19, and we changed it to being, it's just going to be those participating in the broadcast and those participating in the event itself, those leaders and those others that are going to be doing this. We're going to social distance. We're going to make sure people are masked when they are in there, if they're not on the stage or they're not active in this, and we're going to keep everyone as distanced as possible because we don't know where this is going, and we don't know how many of us may have already been infected with COVID-19 or could be spreading it at that event. And just days after that was when Governor Whitmer made her first stay-at-home order, and everything else changed. And then this show became what it was. We started this because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Dave Scott and I in our old radio studio, where we could sit 6 feet apart if we were on one wall and the other wall, like right on it, flush with the wall. My right shoulder to the right wall, and Dave's left shoulder to the left wall, with just a couple of microphones, a couple of point of view cameras, and really we're using these lights that make the background behind me blue. We had hung those up in that studio above us and changed the color to be more of the natural studio lighting that we tend to have in here today in order to make that work, thinking that this is going to be a show we do for a couple of weeks to keep everybody informed on COVID-19, and then became for a few months, for a couple of years, and now we're doing this as we are today, keeping you informed on not just COVID-19, but other things that are making news across the state of Michigan and here in Oakland County and affecting you each and every day. This is a really great article that they put together on the Detroit Free Press's website. They've done excellent work on the Detroit Free Press to kind of recap what this day means in the history of the state of Michigan as it pertains to COVID-19 and kind of where we went from this day 3 years ago to where we're at today with COVID-19, not necessarily being a major problem in our communities anymore, but still very much a problem for people that can be severely affected with the disease should they be infected. So all of these headlines, as always, on our website, civiccentertv.com, on our local news page. We will update that last headline to make sure you have the correct story there as soon as possible. I'll do that here in the next couple of minutes as we're awaiting our first guest today. Of course, you can always stay tuned with us on our local news page for more news and information all throughout the week. These articles from this week will remain on that page until Monday morning before our next news show to begin next week, so that you can always stay up to date on what's been making headlines across Oakland County and around the state of Michigan every single day this week, whether you tune in with us 5 days a week or you just check that page and check in with us once a week and watch all of our episodes or all of our segments all at once and get all the news from around your local area that you need to know and some additional information anytime. CivicCenterTV.com on our local news page, and keep up to date with us on our Megacast page, CivicCenterTV.com/Megacast. We have a great show ahead on this edition of the Megacast. Coming up next, it's our weekly segment on the markets and the economy with Oakland University's Dr. Michael Greiner. Stay tuned. That's coming up next on the Megacast.
Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
There are many different kinds of noses. Our noses can sniff out all kinds of things. Good things and bad things. Your nose knows if those sniffles are just a cold, allergies, or COVID-19. So swab it. Test it. It's good to know.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be like happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
I'm Steve Eiserman of the Detroit Red Wings, and I think every child in Michigan deserves a safe, healthy, and happy childhood. Can we build a state where Children Trust Michigan isn't just a name, but something our kids believe? Please support Children Trust Michigan as the voice for children and families by visiting the website to learn more.
Wondering what to say to someone who's been sexually assaulted or abused?
I believe you. I'm so sorry this happened.
It's not your fault.
Confidential and anonymous help is available at the Michigan Sexual Assault Hotline. Connect with us 24/7. Call 855-VOICES-4 or text 1-866-238-1454 for help. Learn more at michigan.gov/voices4.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. You can learn more about our program and keep up to date with us on demand on civiccentertv.com/megacast, as well as all those links to our partnering stations across the Great Lakes State and around Oakland County, so you can keep up to date with them with 23 other hours of original and imported programming all about the Great Lakes State. Joining us now, as he does each and every week for our weekly talk on the markets and the economy, is Michael Greiner, Assistant Professor of Management at Oakland University. Michael, thanks for being with us.
It's great to be back, Tyler. I loved hearing you recount the history there. We've definitely seen some pretty interesting times over the past few years.
Yeah, definitely have, and are continuing to see interesting times in another way, more modernly, and that includes this continued battle here in the U.S. and around the world, but with inflation. As recently, the Federal Reserve and Chairman Jerome Powell have been keen to raise the rates a little bit lighter because inflation had not necessarily reduced, but hadn't been growing at the same rate. Now we're hearing that potentially a big interest rate hike could be coming from the Federal Reserve. What's going on in that regard?
Yeah, this has been kind of a frustration for everybody involved in this, including, I think, Chairman Powell, because of the fact that we were hoping that we were coming down to a slowdown in inflation. It appeared to be that way. But what really shocked everyone, of course, and we talked about this in a prior episode, was the big jobs report that we got for last month. That was just unbelievable, far beyond what anybody expected, with over 500,000 new jobs created. And it showed that wages were going up pretty aggressively. It showed that there were still more than 2 jobs available for every person looking for a job. The unemployment rate was down to a historic low. So that was kind of a shocker. Now, most people would think, oh, that's good news. You know, unemployment is down. Yes, but the problem is this, is that to be able to get inflation under control, you're basically required to slow down the economy a little bit. You see, as there's more competition for these workers, they're able to bid up the wages that they're demanding from employers. And then the employers have to pass on those wages to the people who are buying the products or services. And that's a big part of where inflation comes from. Now, we are seeing a slowdown in hiring, particularly in certain industries that tend to be more goods-oriented, for example, because they don't rely on workers as much. But the place we're seeing the big increases still are in retail and in services industries like travel and hospitality, that type of thing. The big things that really were shut down during COVID, and now people want to take advantage of. Well, as it turns out, just this morning, we got another jobs report. And again, it was higher than was expected, with about 311,000 new employees. And what's even more significant in some ways is that they'll frequently look back on prior reports to see if they need to adjust the data. And as it turns out, that 500,000 plus jobs report that we got last month, that pretty much stands. So it appears that we still have a very, very robust employment market. And what that does then is send a message to the Fed and to Chairman Powell in particular that we are going to have to increase interest rates even more to try to get inflation under control. So what Powell did then, last week, he actually testified twice in front of Congress, once in front of the House, once in front of the Senate, when he made it very clear that if we see a continuation of these robust employment figures, that we're likely to see faster increases on interest rates. And we had seen a slowdown of those increases. I mean, as you recall, and again, we talked about this in the past, we had 4 months in a row of 0.75% interest rate increases, which was a historic level. Then we went down to a 0.5 percentage point. Then last month we had a 0.25 percentage point increase. And we were hoping that it was going to kind of stay at that level and maybe even slow down even more from that going forward. The problem is that with these kinds of figures, it sends a message to the Fed, you need to stay aggressive on this. And the message that Chairman Powell was sending is that he's not letting up on inflation, that this is a priority for him. He's going to do whatever it takes to get inflation under control, even if it means having to basically hurt the jobs market, which is what he believes he's going to have to do at this point. So the hope is that if there's any silver lining within the jobs report that we received today, it's that it appears wages are slowing down a little bit, that there's not as much upward pressure on wage growth. But still, I mean, the unemployment rate is very low at 3.6%. As I say, we had over 300,000 new jobs created, which is above what was expected. We did have people coming off the sidelines from the economy, so more people being involved in the jobs market. So that's a positive. But still, I mean, it seems to indicate to me, and this is the message that Chairman Powell was sending, is that we're not done with rate increases going forward, and we just need to accept that.
And so as people are looking for jobs and as employers are looking to hire people in our local area, especially in those sectors that we're seeing a real push for more employees, like you said, in retail, it brings up an interesting question, because that relationship between the job market and inflation and vice versa has been so volatile of lately. So what's really having a bigger effect? Is the job market having a bigger effect on inflation, or is inflation having a bigger effect on the job market?
You know, that's a great question. And the problem that we've been dealing with really ever since the COVID pandemic started, as you were talking about before the break, is that all the rules have changed. You know, with this inflation, we had different reasons for the inflation, one right after the other. I mean, immediately after the COVID pandemic, we had the situation where we had the supply chains all snarled because everybody had gotten used to ordering one kind of product as a result of the pandemic, and then they wanted to change what they were ordering as a result of them people going back out to gyms and that type of thing. So that changed all the dynamics there, and they had to restructure the supply chains quite a bit, and that caused all those problems. Then, of course, we had energy prices going up as a result of the invasion in Ukraine, and that then caused a problem for a while. Well, that has also gotten under control more than we had seen in the past. And so those seem like good signs, but the problem is that then it kind of started to gin up the employment market, and we've seen such robust growth in the employment market that really it's been quite surprising. I don't think anybody expected that things would continue for as long as they have. You know, we expected that there'd be a rapid jump back in employment right after the COVID recession. But since then, we've seen these robust numbers one month after another, after another, after another. And it just shows that in some fundamental ways, the economy has changed. And that's, I think, what is making it so hard for economists as a group and the Fed chairman himself to kind of get our minds around what exactly is going on. And part of the problem, he even said this in his testimony. He was challenged by one of the senators, I believe it was Elizabeth Warren, who said, hey, you know, what do you say to people who are might lose their jobs as a result of these interest rate increases? How can you justify to them that you're throwing them out of a job to try to get this inflation under control? And he said, look, you know, we are hampered by the fact that we have only certain limited tools at our disposal to be able to address this. And these tools are not perfect, but they're the only way that we have of addressing inflation. And as it turns out, inflation is a burden on everybody, including working people who've seen much of their wages getting eaten up by inflation, where they're not able to buy as much as they were able to in the past with the wages that they're receiving. So even if they are receiving wage increases, which many people have been as a result of this robust employment market, they've been seeing that their money just hasn't been going as far. So that's kind of the challenge that I think Chairman Powell, the Fed, and economists generally are facing right now, which is we are dealing with this just strange economy right now, and all the rules are broken right now. So we're just trying to kind of muddle our way through.
Yeah, it's really trying to understand all these different compounding issues that are affecting one another, and it's just this big knot that it seems they're trying to untangle while also taking care of some of the basics, trying to address some of the basics of inflation that have affected our economy in the past. Because we've seen, even in the last few times we've had inflation be so high, that's caused costs of business to be so high that employment has gone down. This time around, employment has actually gone up, and we're seeing more people.
That's the crazy thing. Yeah, right. You know, and the hope is that we'll be able to engineer what they call a soft landing, where we don't have this big increase in unemployment, but yet we're able to kind of get inflation under control. Who knows, though? I mean, that could happen, but, you know, it's hard to say right now, just because, again, the rules have changed.
Michael Greiner is an assistant professor of management at Oakland University School of Business Administration and joins us weekly on the Megacast to talk about the markets and the economy here in the U.S. and especially here in the state of Michigan. And he talked about a soft landing from inflation, a not so soft landing in the attempt to merge for JetBlue and Spirit Airlines, trying to keep their costs low as people are enjoying their spring breaks right around now and hoping that next year or in the future those flight prices could be even lower. What's going on in that case, and what ultimately has led to the Justice Department saying, no go on this, we're canceling your flight?
Yeah, great question. And anybody who's been searching for airfares recently knows how high airfares have gotten. On a real basis, they are very high right now. And that has to do with the fact that there is this robust demand again coming out of the recession, where people who were stopped from traveling for years actually are suddenly saying, hey, I've got these savings. I want to go out and be able to enjoy them and do the things that I was restricted from doing during the pandemic. Well, a big part of that, of course, is travel. The problem that we've got, though, is that we've got a very, very consolidated air travel market right now. Over 80% of the market is controlled by just 4 airlines, of course. And those are Delta, which is the big one here in Detroit. And then you've got United, American, and Southwest. And between those 3, they control 8 out of 10 flights going on in the country. Now, to try to respond to that, then, you've got JetBlue, which has been growing pretty robustly across the country, especially, though, in the Northeast and in Florida. And what they have done to try to address this is they've actually tried a couple times to merge with another airline. Their first attempt was to merge with oh boy, I'm blanking out on the name of it, Virgin America, which was based out in San Francisco. But they lost out on that to Alaska Airlines, which ended up going forward with that merger. So then they turned their attention to Spirit Airlines. Now, Spirit Airlines, in some respects, is very different from JetBlue. Anybody who's flown on Spirit Airlines or been exposed to it knows just how serious they are about their low-cost model. I mean, they offer ridiculously low prices. Sometimes I've seen prices as low as $9 each way. But what those prices buy you is nothing. I mean, they buy you basically, you get on the airplane. If you want to bring on anything more than just a bag that you're able to put in the seat in front of you, you have to pay for it. If you want to have any food, you have to pay for it. If you want to have the ticket agent print out your boarding pass, you have to pay for it. They literally charge for every extra, whereas JetBlue has more oriented itself kind of like along the lines of the more traditional airlines, where they offer this package deal where they'll include certain things in with the cost. They'll include certain baggage in with the cost that you're paying, and they have certain entertainment on the flights, all things that you don't see on Spirit Airlines. Now, initially, there had been an offer and an agreement, actually, that Spirit would merge with Frontier, which is an airline much more like Spirit, kind of that ultra low-cost model. And the only other major airline at this point that's really following that model is Allegiant. So you're talking really a small group of airlines that have focused then on trying to deliver the absolute lowest prices with no frills whatsoever, very small seats, very little leg room to people who are very price sensitive. That's, again, not the area that JetBlue is trying to target. So that's where this merger is kind of surprising. But now, that being said, the Justice Department is saying, look, we already have a consolidated industry with 4 carriers holding 80% of the industry. If we allow this merger, yes, JetBlue would grow, and they'd only grow to be about 10% of the market, but still that would mean that 5 airlines would control 90% of the U.S. airline market, which is just too much consolidation. Part of the problem, I think, is that we did have these mega mergers in the past. And of course, one that affected us here in Detroit was the mega merger between Delta and Northwest, where Northwest used to have the big hub here in Detroit that many people may remember. Well, a lot of those mergers were done where there were these behavioral agreements that were made between the Department of Justice and the merging companies, where the airlines would say, okay, we'll let go of certain slots that we have at some of these airports or some of the gates that we have at some of these airports to try to encourage competition. Because the real risk when you have these big mergers and you have so much consolidation is that you lose the competition for fares. competition is what's going to generate lower prices, and it's also what's going to generate innovation. It's because of this competition that firms look to provide better services at lower costs, and that they find ways of doing that, because without those pressures going down, there's really no motivation for the companies to do so. So there's really been a push by this administration, and it's really been something that economists like myself have been urging for a long time, to try to get more hardcore on antitrust law and to try to stop some of these mergers from going through, because all they do is just make it so that consumers are impacted in the long run, and we have less access to the choices that we had in the past. Well, again, the problem is that the horse has left the barn. Again, this is an example of where the administration has imperfect tools available to it. I'm sure their preference would have been to try to block one of these mega mergers that happened a few years ago, but they can't do that. They're over. So what they have available now is this merger. And so they're going to try to focus on it and say, enough consolidation is enough. We're going to stop this consolidation in the airline industry. And they're sending a message both to this industry and others, which are that you can't basically consolidate your way out of competition and create a market where people no longer have the choices available to them that they'd like to have.
Michael, this week, Wednesday, we once again celebrated International Women's Day, and a critical issue for women in our economy over the last decades, really, has been closing the pay gap, or really closing it entirely between what women make and their hourly wages or yearly wages in comparison to men. Now, lately, over the last several years, especially with diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts being a critical part of many businesses and their plans for the future, those gaps have been closed entirely, or at least partially, by some of these companies throughout the U.S. and right here in Michigan. But by and large, where are we at in terms of the gender wage gap that tends to have men being paid several cents more per hour than women on average?
Yeah, as it turns out, you're right that if you look at individual companies, and certainly here in Michigan, you've seen a lot of it, where they've done a great job in trying to address this gender pay gap. But the reality is, when you look at the numbers overall across our country and globally even, the progress has kind of stalled over the last 20 years or so. You know, I remember back in the early 80s and even in the 1970s, you know, I'm dating myself here a little bit, but I remember when it was not uncommon for employers to say, you know, hey, we need to pay the man more because of the fact that he's got to take care of his family. Well, fortunately, those days are gone. And any situation where you see an employer directly paying an employee, if it be a woman, less for the same job, then that's going to be illegal. And there have been lawsuits filed. And as a result, employers really tend to be very careful policing themselves to make sure that when you have two people doing essentially the same job, if it's a man and a woman, that they're paid the same. And that just makes sense. So that's where we made a lot of progress through the 80s and 90s. But again, that seems to have stalled here in the 2000s. And it's when you look at the average wages overall. Now, there are some economists who will argue that when you control for certain factors, basically when you look at what is causing this gap, and then you try to use mathematical tools to isolate which factors are causing this, you can actually pretty much identify what those are. And they tend to be things like different jobs that they're in, different industries that they're in. That women tend to be consolidated in lower paying industries, lower paying jobs. That women also tends to take time off to care for children or elderly relatives. And as a result, they'll have gaps in their employment. That women tend to have a less robust network that they're able to rely upon to help them find higher paying jobs and to help them get into the higher levels of management, for example. And that's all true. But, you know, what something that I've argued, and a number of other economists have argued, is that doesn't solve the problem. You know, it's not enough to simply say, oh, you know, women do different jobs from men, and so it's okay that they're paid less overall. You know, what we need to do now is address more, I think, the society-wide institutional issues that are out there. Why are, for example, these industries that tend to be dominated by women paid less than industries that tend to be dominated by men? You know, as you asked earlier with the question about jobs and inflation, you know, you have to ask yourself, what came first, the chicken or the egg? You know, are these industries dominated by women because they're paid less, or are they paid less because they're dominated by women? And my guess is that you probably have a little bit of both. But I think that now we're going to have to go through some efforts in society where we do some fundamental rethinking of our relationship with work, where we make it, for example, more socially acceptable for men also to take time off to care for children and elderly relatives. So women are able to continue their careers without interruption, or at least that responsibility is balanced somewhat. Also that certain industries that tend to be more female dominated, that they also tend to be paid at the equivalent level of other industries, which tend to be more male oriented. So I think that that's going to be a process that our country is going to have to go through. But it's important that we do so, because one study I saw said that as much as $7 trillion a year is lost worldwide as a result of the gender pay gap. That's basically the amount of money that would be gained if women were being fully paid what men are being paid on average. And if that happens, you could just imagine all the more money that would be available in our economy to be able to generate jobs and generate economic activity. And unfortunately, it's being limited by the fact that we still have some pretty old-fashioned perceptions of the way things are supposed to be, and that those perceptions are translating into some real factors then that you see reflected in the job market.
Well, Michael, we appreciate you joining us as always to talk about what's going on in our economy and in the markets, and how all these different factors continue to tighten that ball of yarn that we're trying to untangle here in our economy.
It's great to be here, Tyler. Thanks for having me, and try to be careful out there on those roads.
Yeah, definitely, as we have a very snowy day and a snowy weekend here in Michigan. We'll take a break here on the Megacast. On the other side, we'll be talking to one of over 300 charities and nonprofits supported on the Share Detroit platform. Pastor Paula Lee-Barnes joins us from Kingdom Presence next on the Megacast.
Like what you see? Beautiful works of art, masterworks of metal, and accomplishments of artistry will be on display near you. All kinds of artists from all walks of life come together to celebrate their skill and appreciate their work's beauty. Hot Works presents the 2023 Orchard Lake Fine Art Show. Stop by July 29th and 30th between 2 and 10 p.m. between Powers and Daly off of Orchard Lake Road.
Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. You can stay up to date with us and all of our partnering stations on our website, civiccentertv.com/Megacast. Links to every one of those stations, and you can find all of our full shows and each individual segment on demand as well. Those will be posted about 1 o'clock each afternoon. Find our full shows on demand, civiccentertv.com/Megacast. Joining us now is one of over 300 charities and nonprofits supported on the Share Detroit platform. Pastor Paula Lee-Barnes is the Executive Director of Kingdom Presence and joins us now on the Megacast. Thank you for being with us, Pastor.
Thank you so much for having me, Tyler.
Yeah, glad to have you on as we talk about this organization of yours. Before we get into more of the specifics, tell us just on the basic level, the history and the mission of Kingdom Presence.
Absolutely. Well, actually, Kingdom Presence is not very old. We were founded in 2019, and we exist to equip young people and to empower young people with education enrichment programs and with life skill development training. We also offer a free community food pantry to our neighbors and to our community to help them to combat hunger and food insecurity.
So this was founded, as you said, in 2019, and there are organizations that do this kind of work in communities all across southeastern Michigan and across the state. So what sparked Kingdom Presence to arise and do this in your specific area of southeast Michigan?
Well, initially we started because we had a summer program at the church, and we decided instead of having vacation Bible school that particular summer, we came up with the idea to have a program called Life Skills Week. And so it was a week-long program, and each week we had adult volunteers to come in to teach a particular life skill. And then it was then that we realized that some of these basic skills weren't so basic with the young people and with the youth. We had not only young people from the church, but we had young people from the community who came out to join us. And so we had a course where we had someone to teach the young men how to tie a necktie. We had a course teaching some of the young people basic etiquette skills. We taught financing, how to balance a checkbook, how to interview, shaking hands, things that, might be considered basic, but we found out that were not so basic. And so from that, I decided that this could be a good opportunity to teach some of the youth and young adults about some life skills. And also from that, another summer, we offered a education enrichment program where we had one of our members who is a school teacher during the school year came in, and she helped the student with their summer packets, their summer vacation packets that they received from their schools. And so that's how it all came about. It was during COVID, however, that the food pantry came about. We saw the need in the community where people were, losing jobs or not having work opportunities. And that is how the food pantry came about.
And you can find more information in a couple of places. shareofdetroit.org and go to their Find a Nonprofit section and search for Kingdom Presence, or go directly to their website at kingdompresence313.org, kingdompresence313.org. And Pastor, as these services are provided in your community, and there's clearly a need for that in communities all throughout our local area, how do people get in contact with the organization to ultimately tap into some of these resources? And if they or their children are in need of some of these assistances, how can they get in contact and tap into these resources?
Well, as you mentioned, someone can go to our website, kingdompresence313.org, and there is a page where you can offer assistance. Again, on the Share Detroit website, there is a section on the Share Detroit website where if you decided that you wanted to volunteer, if you have expertise in a particular field, if you are a former school teacher, or if you are a current school teacher, you have some time over the summer where you want to offer your services to assist us with the education enrichment program, that opportunity would be embraced and welcome.
More information again, kingdompresence313.org. That's their website to learn more and to help them in their mission to provide life skills and education supports to people and kids all throughout the local area. And we're joined on the program today by their executive director, Pastor Paula Lee-Barnes from Kingdom Presence on the program. You mentioned Share Detroit. It's a great place to go to find volunteer opportunities with Kingdom Presence. So in terms of what sort of volunteers you are looking for, who are you looking for? What sort of skills are you looking for people that want to help your organization as a volunteer?
Well, as I mentioned, school teachers, if we have any IT, anyone with expertise or knowledge in IT, anyone with, if you can have sewing skills, auto mechanic skills, runs the full gamut. So we're reaching out to anyone who has the time on their hands and who has the patience to work with our young people, to teach them anything, because if there's a skill that gave you an opportunity in life, if there is a skill that employed you, then it can be a skill to teach another young person.
And there's also access on your website, too, if you look under the events section, for a number of different other resources throughout the community, including free health screenings, doctor talks and lunches as well, and even the ability to, during the holiday season, adopt a family. So there's so many different ways that people can get involved and support the individuals that are tapping into some of these resources and learning some of these life skills and getting some of these educational enrichment opportunities all throughout the year. Can you tell us about some of those and ways that people can participate?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, we are fortunate to have the Wayne Health Mobile Unit come out to our facility. So if that is for anyone in the community or outside of the community. Maybe you don't have the time to go to your doctor to have your blood pressure checked. Maybe you have not found the time to get to your doctor to have your flu vaccination. We have that at our facility, the Wayne Mobile Health Unit. These are professional individuals from Wayne State that come out on their mobile health unit, and they're at our facilities typically on Wednesdays for a couple of hours, but you can check our website. The times are there. Also, we have a connection or a relationship with a senior facility where we have the doctor there come out to our location, and he does something called Lunch and Learn Doc Talks. And he talks about, the last time he was there, he talked about sleep apnea, and he talks about diabetes prevention. So this is some of the things that we also offer to our seniors. So while we also empower our youth and young adults, we also have opportunities and programs for our seniors as well.
Again, more information can be found on their website, kingdompresence313.org, kingdompresence313.org. And Pastor, I understand that this is also a faith-based nonprofit. So how does faith play into all the work that you're doing with Kingdom Presence?
Well, we believe, as a Christian, I believe that we are the hands and feet of Christ. We have a responsibility. We have a work to do while we're here on earth. For those who are in need, for those who we come across, individuals that we come across, our neighbors that we interact with, we have to be the hands and feet of God to make sure that if there's a need, that if we have the resources to provide that need, that we are there for them.
More information on all this and ways you can get involved with Kingdom Presence can be found on either Share Detroit's website on sharedetroit.org or on kingdompresence313.org as well. Once again, kingdompresence313.org is their website, as we've been joined today by Pastor Paula Lee-Barnes, Executive Director of Kingdom Presence, one of over 300 charities and nonprofits supported on the Shared Detroit platform. Pastor, just another 30 seconds or so left before we'll need to move on for today and wrap things up. Anything else you'd like to say about Kingdom Presence?
Absolutely. As you mentioned, we also do a adopt a family program during the holidays. And so we are always looking for resources. We're always looking for assistance in helping us to make sure that our programs are beneficial to our neighbors and to our community. So if you have time, if you have resources, please reach out to us, go to our website. If you have connections with, we're also looking for assistance with our food pantry. So if anyone out there has connection with Gleaners or because we are trying to get in, trying to find that opportunity, as many of you may know, you have to apply for those programs. We've applied. We're waiting. So if anyone out there has any connections with Forgotten Harvest, Gleaners, please reach out to us because we have a need in the community. There's food insecurity. We need as much help and assistance as we could possibly get.
Pastor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tyler.
KingdomPresence313.org is their website. You can also learn about 300 plus charities and nonprofits across the local area on sharedetroit.org. That's it for this week's editions of the Megacast. A big thank you to our guests and our crew for making this program possible today. Until next week, take care of each other, and we'll see you very soon.